maybe. I think you got to unmute yourself. There we go.
Okay. Now we have Ata, Ata Abande. Oh, next we have, Ata is an inspirational speaker, certified coach, and business leader. He's the founder of AGO Design Group and CEO of Inflatable Socks. Very impressive. I learned a motivational speaker is someone who encourages you to be the best version of yourself. Welcome, Ata.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for that awesome introduction, Ayana. First of all, I just want to say that you are inspiring me. I wish I was as confident as you are when I was your age. I don't know where I would be right now if I was. So keep it up and keep being you, keep being awesome. Thank you to all the other panelists, Caleb, Marquise, Whitney. You guys said a lot of things that resonate with me, and even Chief Payne. Um, as Ayana mentioned, my name is Atal Bandi, and I just wanted to share with you guys real quickly a little bit about my story and race in my story. So as you can tell by my name, I'm not American. I was born and raised in Nigeria, West Africa, a country that is very different as far as different in terms of how we deal with race than it is here in the United States. And came up here after high school, and I actually went to Calvin College, so go Knights. And my story is a story of really coming to understand and learn about race. One of the things like I like to say whenever I have these conversations is that I consider myself an inside outsider. And what I mean by that is I'm an outsider in that I'm not originally from the United States, but I'm an insider because I'm a Black man. And when people see me, they don't see, oh, he's Nigerian, so let's treat him different. They see just another Black man. And so that's my experience. And initially in coming to the United States, I remember saying a lot of things that I hear a lot of white people say now. In that I would say things like, why do Black people pull the race card all the time? It's not always about race. Just get out there and work and do your thing, and you can be successful. Partly because I just didn't know, I hadn't identified exactly what racism was or how it looked in terms of my treatment. And a couple quick stories. In going to Calvin, one of the things that we used to do on the weekends, college kids, we like to go out to the bar. And we, for whatever reason, we decided we would drive down Lake Drive every time because Calvin butts up against East Beltline and Lake Drive. We drive down Lake Drive, down Fulton, into downtown, hang out, have a good time, and then drive right back the same way. And as you would imagine, it'd be a few of us guys because we hung out with the other Africans. So you about 4 or 5 African guys in the car driving through Lake Drive at 2 o'clock in the morning. For some of you, just me saying that, you already know kind of what would happen. Invariably, we'd be pulled over. And but the good thing about it was we never got any kind of issues. We never got any kind of tickets or anything, partly because we show our Calvin IDs. We almost thought that was a get out of jail free card, but we thought that was normal. Coming from Nigeria, you interact with police like that in various ways. So we thought that was normal. So much so that we would plan that into our drive time. Hey, if we leave now, we'll get pulled over, probably about 10 minutes. We'll get back to the dorm and we'd have X number of hours to sleep before we have class or whatever. So anyway, that was my experience. I remember it took me about 4 or 5 years to really identify what race was and understand what it is. And some of that came in my career following college. My first real job was working at a bank. I worked at a few banks locally. I had a 10-year career in banking. And in that time, I experienced a lot of the things that Whitney mentioned from the Harvard Business Review in terms of downplaying my personality. I had dreads back then. I cut them because I thought it was going to limit my promotion. I didn't get promoted. I got passed over a lot. As a matter of fact, I would train. I led my district, and one bank in particular, led my district in sales for about 1.5 years and wanted to be promoted to a bigger branch, and had that conversation with my district manager several times. And every time it was different excuse. But I was the branch that she would send all of her new hires to train. So every time she hired a new manager, she send them over to my branch. They'd spend a month with me training on how to be a manager at the bank. And each time she'd say, well, I want you to do this before I can promote you to this branch. Only for me to train another individual, send a guy over to me. I trained him. He had never worked at a bank before. He had worked in finance, but not in banking. only for him to be placed in the branch that I've been asking for almost a year. He was a white male, great guy. I have nothing bad to say about him. And I don't think that she was racist at her core. But I just feel like one of the things that Whitney mentioned is that what do we see when we see different positions? And I just feel like maybe for that branch, she just didn't see me in that branch and saw this other individual as somebody that would be the right person to be in the branch. And so things like that led me to deciding to get out of banking. I lost my job. And when I lost my job, I went through another part of what Whitney mentioned in terms of not being able to get a job. I had a master's degree, bachelor's degree, obviously, some of the biggest banks in the world on my resume, successful track record, and applied to hundreds of jobs and got a handful of interviews, let alone actual offers. And that led me to starting my company, Algo Design Group, which led me to kind of the work that I'm doing now with Spring GR, which is a business training program that is geared towards minorities, the underserved entrepreneur, in hopes of closing that wealth gap. You know, a lot of us have seen the now infamous article that listed Grand Rapids as one of the best cities to start a business, second best in the country, but 51 out of 52 for African Americans financially, or 122nd out of 180 some cities for Hispanic entrepreneurs. And so the work we do is to try to close that gap. I always say that the work we do is at the intersection of race, this race conversation. And so that's what we've been doing for the last 6.5 years, is being able to train up and help develop minority entrepreneurs that can change the narrative of our city to be one where it is or can be the second best city in the country for anybody that's an entrepreneur, not a specific, whether you look like me or look like somebody else. So it's been quite a journey of learning for me, and just really understanding. For me, obviously, learning about race was something that I was forced into because, again, of my skin color. You have to learn to navigate because of your skin color. And so I've been forced to learn that. And it's really important to say that, because as Whitney mentioned, the code switching thing. I was on a panel call earlier this week, and one of the questions that was asked was, how many times have you had a supervisor that was a different race than you? And there are Black people and white people on this call. As you would imagine, all the Black people on the call said almost every supervisor I've had has been a different race. And of the white people, I want to say there was maybe 2 that had somebody that was a different race than them. And it was always, one of them said it was when he worked at a warehouse. And another one said it was when he worked at a Popeyes. And so just thinking about that, if you as a white person walk into a work environment where you were the only white person and there was all these Black people, what would your code switching have to look like? So I'll stop there. I know my time is up, but just wanted to at least kind of share some of those things real quick.
I really, that last thing hit really hard in terms of managers looking like you being in a manufacturing setting or in a fast food restaurant. That's crazy. And I bet things that we often don't think about. Ata, would it be okay? I know Marquise has a meeting at 10, but there was a question we didn't get to ask him. And then can we ask you a few questions?
Yeah.
And we are going to go a little bit over on time just because we did not plan for the, some things that weren't planned to help support minority entrepreneurs in our community and in our country. And how can we do that?
Yeah, I think it's important. One of the things that we've learned was with the work we do with Spring GR is that we have some very, very vibrant, very, very talented entrepreneurs with some great products and services. And so I think it's important to support those entrepreneurs with our dollars, because those things help build the wealth that is needed for some of the change that we're gonna need to see in the community. One of the things I always say that is important to do is, as a small business, we can't always have for the entrepreneur the same level of expectation that we would have for some of these big Fortune 500 companies, because these companies have made their mistakes. So we have to allow these small companies to be able to make those mistakes as well and be able to hold them accountable, and in a way that helps them to continue to build. So I always tell people, you know, there's different websites that list different minority-owned businesses. We have a directory on our webpage, Grand Rapids Area Black Business Does. I know there's one that was just started by one of the media channels where you can find businesses, but I say support them with your dollars. And I'm not saying you got to change all your spending habits to say not only spend Black, but I would say be intentional about spending a certain amount. Whether you say, hey, I've got a budget where I eat out and I spend $200 a month eating out. I want to spend at least 15, 20% of that money on a minority owned business. And then at the same time, while you're doing that, allow them the opportunity to make a mistake. Because what happens with a lot of small businesses is they make a mistake, the food is cold, something is late or whatever, and you're like, oh, well, that's it, I'm not going back. You got to give them the opportunity to learn. Let them know, hey, I want to patronize you. Here's what happened. Here's my experience. I want to continue to support you. So that now they know and they can actually build on it. So that's one of the things I'd say. Support them, give an opportunity to make a mistake, and be able to share with them. Think of them as if they were your child and they had a business. How would you talk to your kid if they messed up in a business they're trying to? You would support them. You would tell them how they did it wrong and show them what they need to do to do better.
That's awesome. Ayana, did you have a question that you wanted to ask Ata?
Yes, when you were younger, have you ever stood up for someone because of their color?
Yes. If I'm thinking about it as being younger, so I grew up in Nigeria, and so I went to an international high school or international school. So there's people of all colors and creeds from all over the world, and so I know there are different times when as kids, someone has something and they're picking at you for whatever, the kind of food that you're eating or whatever. And so being able to kind of speak up to say, hey man, we can't do that. That's not right. I feel like throughout my life, I've always been in a position of advocacy and being able to advocate for somebody else. And so it's one of the things like I love right now about the work that I do with Spring GR, in that I consider myself privileged in the fact with the life that I've had and being able to go to Calvin and get an education, come here for an education. And so I consider it my responsibility then to be able to help those that are coming behind me. And so when I am at a table, even if a lot of the tables I sit at are majority or all white, I feel like I have a responsibility to be a voice for the community that I represent. And so I'm thankful for having that quality being instilled in me at a young age, to be able to speak to kids like myself, to say, hey, don't do this, to now carry it into the work that I do.
Very good. Thank you so much for that. So closing remarks, closing statements from each of the panelists for your comments. And then Ata.
I think I would echo kind of what Whitney said. I would say one of the things I would always encourage is build a relationship with someone that looks different than you, so you can understand their reality. It's so important. One of the things like I've learned is that a lot of the issues we have as a country from everything can be solved with relationship. So building a relationship with someone that's different than you, and then learning about your history, learning about the history that isn't told, the Tuskegee projects. Some people it's interesting to know how many people didn't know about Juneteenth. So look up some of these things that have happened in Black history that people don't realize, to understand some of the emotion. But I'd say, have conversations. A lot of times we shy away from the conversation about race, which is one of the reasons I'm so happy for mixed staffing doing this. We shy away from it for so much, and until you have the conversation, you can't learn and you can't move forward. We're afraid to offend people, but offending people is part of being human. And I've offended my wife before, and by me offending her, she's talked to me to say, hey babe, don't say this like this anymore. And I've learned that's what's going to happen with our conversations about race. Don't be afraid to offend. I'm not saying do it intentionally. It's going to happen if you're going to learn. I've offended people because I've had to learn about race. And so be willing to be vulnerable, to be able to apologize when that happens, so that somebody can gracefully teach you how then not to.
Very good. Ayana, any closing remarks or anything that you'd like to say?
Well, do I say the ending?
Yeah.
So, do I do the ending, or do I?
Sure, anything that you want to do. Anything that you want to say.
Well, I just wanted to let you guys know now and the people who are watching is don't be afraid to make a change. If we can work together, one day soon, one day, we will bring Martin Luther King Jr. dream back to reality.
I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of the speakers, to all of the listeners on Facebook and on Zoom.